Hello. Today I want to talk about Keir Starmer, and I must warn you that I'm not going to be very, very kind to him. And I think I'm not alone in thinking that he's pretty hopeless. He's not doing a very good job. And I think that if he carries on the way he's going now, there's every possibility we can end up with Nigel Farage as Prime Minister after the next election, which is pretty frightening. But I think more and more people are realising that Starmer's not really doing very well and are losing confidence in him. And I was reminded of this particularly about when I watched a documentary on Channel 4 a couple of nights ago, where they went to interview a couple of focus groups in Grimsby. Now, Grimsby is a fishing port on the east coast of the UK. Once upon a time, it was an extremely important and big fishing port, but it declined. And by the time of the referendum, they were doing okay. They were still fishing, and they were selling all the fish in Europe. So what would happen was the fish was caught and it was bunged on a lorry, went straight over to the EU and was in restaurants in Paris and Brussels within 24, 36 hours. And as such, it was surviving. But Nigel Farage managed to persuade everybody that it was the Spanish that were taking all our fish out of the North Sea, and that if only we were to vote to leave the EU, that then we would have all our fishing rights back, our fishing waters back again, and we'd be able to catch all the fish we wanted, and we'd be so rich and successful and so on. But what in fact happened was that, yes, we did get back our fishing waters, and we found we could catch as much fish as we wanted to. But what we did find was, because of the paperwork, because of the need for veterinary certificates and health certificates and all the commercial documentation, by the time that was all completed, by the time the lorry got to Calais or wherever it was, and that all had to be checked and so on, there were so many delays that the Europeans just didn't want to be bothered anymore. Not only that, they didn't want to do all the paperwork their end either. So the fishing industry, the exports to the EU from Grimsby, kind of collapsed, and as did the whole fishing industry, really. So there's very little left of it. And this is really down to Farage, who managed to persuade these people that they should vote to leave. And indeed, a very high majority voted to leave from Grimsby. Now, these two focus groups, there were two groups of 8. Well, one, I think, were people who voted Labour last time, and the other group were people who voted for somebody else. And they were asked, for example, what they thought of how the government was doing, and it was all negative. Everybody was negative. And they asked about what they thought about Conservatives, all negative. And they were asked about what they thought about reform, and I think, again, it was negative. It was negative whenever asked anything about any politicians. But at the end, they asked each of these focus groups who they thought would make the best Prime Minister between Starmer and Badenoch and Farage. And you really, it was almost unbelievable. One person said that they thought Keir Badenoch would be a best Prime Minister. One person, one alone, said that they thought that Keir Starmer was the best person to be Prime Minister, and 14 out of 16 voted for Farage to be Prime Minister. And you just really can't believe it. This is the man who's really responsible for persuading everybody to vote in a way that destroyed their economy. And there are only two possible explanations for that. The one is that these people were so stupid it's not true, stupider than stupid. Or the other is that, frankly, Keir Starmer's very unpopular. If you can't get more than one person out of 16 to vote for him as being better than Badenoch or Farage, I mean, that's pretty desperate. And I think it's a combination of things. I think he makes so many bad judgments. He said, and this is the point at which I lost him completely, and I completely lost faith in him. About 3 years ago, he said for the first time that under his leadership, the UK would never apply to rejoin the customs union, single market, agree to freedom of movement, or, heaven forbid, try to rejoin the EU. It was never going to happen. Now, he had no need or reason 3 or 4 years ago to say that. All he had to say was, look, we had a referendum, this is where we voted, we have to abide by the referendum, but things may change and we'll see. But he couldn't do that because he's worried about the red tops, about the Express and the Daily Mail writing and saying, he wanted to rejoin. So he's frightened of everybody, and he was frightened of them. So he couldn't let there be any doubt at all. It was absolutely, from that point onwards, never ever, it was a red line. And that, in my view, was really stupid. But then you look at some of his other judgments. He took over as Prime Minister from what is, I think most people agree, the most dishonest, corrupt, inept government we've ever had, the Tories. And believe you me, I'm criticising Starmer, but I mean he's infinitely better than what we had before. But we found out very soon after he became Prime Minister that he'd accepted up to £100,000 worth of gifts, he and his wife. And you think, this is a Labour Prime Minister. I mean, what's he thinking? People don't give presents to politicians unless they want something back. And how can you start off with that being revealed? And then you look at other things, other misjudgments, in my view anyway. In February at the United Nations, 45 African countries proposed a motion whereby there would be a clampdown on international money laundering. And I think 135 countries voted for it, but just 9 countries voted against restricting or against trying to clamp down on international money laundering. And we were one of them. And everybody knows that our tax havens, I mean, half the world's tax havens are British overseas territories, and it's thought that 35% of all international money laundering is done through British tax havens, and you wonder why he would think that it was right to vote against it. And then again, a couple of weeks ago, because he doesn't want to upset Trump, there was another vote about Russian troops leaving Ukraine. And 130 odd countries voted in favour of them leaving, but just 9 countries voted that Russian troops should stay in Ukraine. And those countries included Belarus, Eritrea, North Korea, Sudan, the United States, and of course, United Kingdom. You think this doesn't look good. This doesn't look good. And of course, we know he went to meet Trump in the White House, and he came back, and I think he thought he was Jack the Lad really, and he got all the EU leaders together to get some sort of policy regarding Ukraine and to support Ukraine. And then only last week it was announced that the Europeans are going to spend £150 billion on rearming. And they said in the announcement that not one penny was going to be spent in the US or in the UK. So Starmer may well have thought when he got all the European leaders together that somehow he was a big shot on the international stage again. I mean, you can see we really don't count. I mean, that 150 billion, how much of that would have been spent in the UK? We're a big arms producing country, but not a penny. And then there are other things, the Winter Fuel Allowance we know about, and the idea of imposing these increases in employers and national health insurance, which is bound to have a negative effect on businesses, because people are going to think twice about employing more people. And then there's the thing last week about the disability and how to raise $5 billion they're going to squeeze people who are disabled or may not be disabled and whatever. And there's the refusal to lift the 2-child cap on benefits. And you can't help feeling all the time all these judgments, they're all about trying not to upset anybody. You don't want to upset Trump. You don't want to upset rich people because they might leave the country. And you don't want rich people leaving the country. They might come here with all this inward investment, i.e. money laundering, and set up business here and launder money. I don't want to upset them. And we don't expect Daily Express readers, and don't expect people to read the Daily Mail. Don't expect anybody except for poor people. People who get benefits, that you can upset them as much as you like because they haven't got any power and they're not going to do anything. But I just wanted to sort of paint a picture, sort of an analogy, I think, of where we are really and how we've got where we are. So imagine this, that we're a company. This is about 10 years ago. We're a company. Say we're based perhaps in Hampshire. And we buy goods and we sell goods and we supply customers. Mostly about half our customers are in Hampshire, and we have a system whereby we deliver with our own vans, and the customer orders and the next day they get delivery. You know, it's all very efficient. And we've got a few customers in other parts of the country. And this company has some shareholders and it has a board of directors, and it's got a chairman who's called Dave. And one day Dave comes into the boardroom and he says, I've been talking to this guy Nigel down at the golf club, and he says we should drop all these local customers. We should go and find some customers further afield. He says there are fantastic opportunities in Scotland and Northern Ireland and Wales and all sorts of places. He's really going on about it. He's telling everybody about it, and in due course the board hear from the shareholders that more and more people are thinking this is, it sounds good. We just get rid of all these, waste our time delivering to all these local people. We start trying to find other people everywhere else. We better have a vote about it. So they have a vote, and they vote yes, that's a good idea. That's go for this new policy. Dave immediately walks off. He says, "Well, I know what to do with it." And in comes Teresa, and she's completely out of her depth, and the rest of the board keeps shouting at her, and in the end she just has to go. And Boris takes over, and Boris is a Jack the Lad. He's having a good time. He's totally irresponsible. He's really a bit of a grifter, and he falls around, and eventually he has to go because he misbehaves. And then they take then someone from the typing pool, a woman called Liz, who's completely and utterly clueless, takes over. She lasts about 2 hours, and she's got rid of. And then they get Rishi from accounts in, and he struggles on for about 3 years. He's absolutely fed up with it at the end, and then he just decides he's had enough. And so the whole board resign, and a new board is elected. And so the new board, they all arrive for the first board meeting, and it's lovely, isn't it? They all lovely leather chairs and these seats and everything. Don't know anything about business. Don't know a clue about business. Isn't it nice? Fantastic. And Keir, who's the new chairman, he says, things are not quite as good as we thought. The overdraft's a bit bigger than we expected, and so on. But we'll fix it all. I'm going to fix everything, and I've got a plan. So they say to him, well, what's the plan, Keir? How are you going to do it? And he says, well, what I'm going to do, he says, we've had a look, the roof is all leaking at the back. Well, I'm going to put a new roof on, and the van, I think, needs replacing. I'm going to replace the van, and I'm going to get a lot of new machinery in and employ some more people. I'm going to have a whole new big IT department and so on, and generally refurbish all the offices and give everybody a rise. And they say, I ain't going to do that. I've got a plan. So what's the plan? How are we going to do this? Oh, he says, we're going to go for growth. Go for growth. Got to grow. So they say, well, how are you going to do that, Keir? Because if you want to grow a business, you've got to train people, you've got to teach them, you've got to buy new equipment, machinery, you've got to need the money for that, you've got to raise the money. We've got an overdraft, and the sales are falling every year, and we're struggling as it is. Oh, he says, don't worry. He says, I put it in our mission. We're going for growth. And they say, well, what happens if we don't get any growth? I mean, people are going to start saying, we're not growing. What are we going to say? Oh, he says, I've thought of that. He said, down on the trading estate, there's another company down there, one of our competitors. He says, they've got a lot more money than we've got, of course, and they're much more successful than we are, but they're having a bad time at the moment. It belongs to a German firm, I think. Just whenever anybody says you don't want to do, tell them about the German company, and that should do it. And then the accountant, Rachel, says, look here, we're going to be a bit short of money this next month. We're going to need a bit more. And he says, yeah, he thought about that, but he said, look, he said, there's that guy who cleans the lavatories, the guy with one leg. He said, and there's the window cleaner guy. He's a bit simple, isn't he? And there's that girl in the office who's also not very bright, and we're not paying very much. Let's reduce all their wages, and that should actually that should because I think they're not really working hard enough. Reduce all their wages, and that should help make up for the gap. And that's really it, isn't it? That's it. We're not doing very well. We've got no plans for how we're going to get out of this mess. Going for growth means nothing. Going for growth is take back control, get Brexit done. It means nothing. Growth takes time. It takes a very, very long time. And right now, things are getting worse and worse and worse. And if I just summarise, how we are at the moment, we've got low or no growth. In fact, the economy shrank in February. That's a great start for going for growth, isn't it? Low productivity, low investment, low living standards. In fact, we said that the poorest people in this country are poorer than the poorest people in Slovenia. Very low morale. Really, nobody's expecting things to get better. We've got young people leaving the country. We've got the lowest state pensions almost anywhere in the world. We've got high borrowings and high interest. We're paying absolute fortune in interest. We've got the highest gas, electricity prices in Europe, highest rail fares in Europe, highest house prices. And regarding house prices, they say we're going to build 1.5 million houses, and then somebody says, we're short of 25,000 bricklayers. Where are we going to get them from? We'll train them up. We're training everybody up. We're training up doctors, we're training up nurses, training up bricklayers, training up hospitality workers, training up all these people. Hardly any unemployment. Or we'll get some of these disabled people, squeeze them a bit. And at the same time, we just welcome any foreigners to come and buy anything because that's called foreign investment. And I think it's very soon now, I've said this before, a lot of people, this is another reason why the economy is doing so badly. People are paying so much money out in rent or in mortgage repayments. They haven't got any money for anything else. They haven't got any money for going out to restaurants and shopping and all the rest of it. And I think as people get, the trajectory we're on now is not going to stop. We're not going to suddenly turn around. It's just going to go on and on. I don't think we're even at the beginning of how bad things are going to get. But a lot of people are not going to be able to afford to keep their houses, and they become homeless, or they're going to have their houses repossessed. And I think, especially what's going on in America, a lot of big investors in America say, let's pull out of America, let's go invest and buy properties in the UK. And I think you're going to find America swooping in and buying up endless houses. I mean, they bought everything else. They bought so many of our businesses. They bought so much of our infrastructure. And what we need now to go back to Starmer, we want somebody who's really strong and really got some really good ideas and has some sort of confidence and take a few risks and get things going. But above all, is we just have to find a way of returning to the EU. Even if it only begins with begging them to let us rejoin the customs union, all those things, a single market, because as we are, there is no future. It's really, really desperate. But the Prime Minister is absolutely adamant. The Prime Minister, I always think of him as the guy who he left home in the morning and he's going to drive to Glasgow and he took the wrong turning. He's on the way to Bristol. And he's been driving for the last 2 hours on the way to Bristol, knowing he's going the wrong way, knowing he's not going to arrive where he wanted to go. But because he made the decision originally, the wrong decision, to go to take the road to Bristol, he must carry on. And it's just so stupid. And it's all going to end in tears, I'm afraid. And as I say, I think the way he's going on, there's every chance that that will end up with Farage as Prime Minister next time. And heaven help us if that happens. Anyway, that's what I think about it. I know that there are people who are going to unsubscribe because I'm being unkind to Keir Starmer, but I think the number of people, when I was first unkind about Starmer a few months ago, I got all sorts of negative response, but the response since has been less and less, and I think more and more people now agree that he's not a great Prime Minister, and he's not doing very well. Anyway, that's what I think about it. And if you've watched as far as always, thank you very much indeed. And so until next time, please subscribe, please hit the like button, and bye for now.